Today I'm going to talk about Out from Boneville by Jeff Smith, which is the first collected edition of the Bone series and collects the first 6 issues of the Bone comic books. I've actually read these issues before and talked about them on this channel when I reviewed Bone, the complete epic, all in one volume. But I've decided I want to go back and look at the individual volumes for a couple reasons. One is because it will give me the opportunity to talk about the story in more detail. And secondly, because these are in color. And I feel like this story works best when it's in color. Bone, the complete epic all in one volume, which I reviewed on this channel before and which I'll link to in the description down below, was in black and white. So you didn't have these vibrant colors like you do here in this version. Now, according to Wikipedia, the comic book was originally published in black and white, and apparently even the first collected editions were in black and white, and it wasn't until 2005 or 2006 that these color editions first appeared. Which seems strange, doesn't it? I mean, looking at these pictures, you would never believe that this was originally all in black and white, right? Okay, maybe some of these pictures more than others. But certainly for a lot of these pictures, you look at them and you'd think to yourself, this was made to be in color. These must have always been in color. But apparently not. Apparently it was originally in black and white. But I think since the color editions were published in 2005 or 2006, there was no going back from them, from then. Any child or adult who saw these stories in color, I think, was forever picturing this series in color. So this is on loan from my local library. I had ordered these books for my students in Vietnam when I was working at the university in Vietnam as a way for them to practice their English. And that edition was a little bit different. I'm using this right now. I'll give it back in a little bit, Rosa. So that edition was soft cover. This, as you can see, is hardcover. And it was also bigger. This is a smaller edition. That edition actually wasn't quite that big. It was a normal comic book size. So the pages were a little bit bigger. I mean, it's got all the same artwork in here, but it's just a little bit smaller. On the other hand, this is compact and easier to carry. It's very thin, surprisingly thin, and you can read through it in, I think, easily a couple hours, 3 hours at most. It's just 6 issues of the comic. So, with that intro out of the way, let's go through and talk about these issues. And I'm going to be spoiling everything. But we start off with the 3 bones. Phone Bone, Smiley Bone, and Phony Bone. Phone Bone is our protagonist. He's kind of the everyman character. Smiley Bone is the comic relief. He's the stupid character. And then Phony Bone is the greedy and unscrupulous character. And as our story starts out, they are lost in the middle of the desert. Now, there's a backstory here, which is only briefly hinted at in these opening panels, and which gets fleshed out more and more as the series progresses. But Phony Bone has been run out of town. He's got a lot of get-rich-quick schemes, and the townspeople of Boneville have had enough, and so they have run him out of town, and Phone Bone has accompanied him to help him make his escape out of town. And Smiley Bone is just along for the ride, as Phony Bone points out in the early issues. In these early panels. Don't get me wrong, Phone Bone. I'm grateful you were able to get me out of town. But tell me, why do you have to go and bring him with us? to torture you. I knew that. Yeah. Smiley Bone's happy-go-lucky way is antagonistic to Phony Bone. Sorry, there was something else I was going to say, but I forgot what. Oh, yes. So they are obviously, as you can see, cartoon characters of indiscriminate species. My children think that they look like dogs, but yeah, they're just obviously cartoon characters. They are coming from Boneville, which I guess all the little hints and bits we get about Boneville indicate that it's some sort of advanced society, similar to modern day society. And they're out in the desert when they get swarmed by locusts. And then they get separated. So Phone Bone is separated from his two cousins and has to make his way through the mountains alone. There are two rat creatures which want to eat him and a dragon who protects them. Protects him, Phone Bone. Eventually, he comes to the pass in the mountain and the valley here in gorgeous full color, where he runs into Ted the Bug, and then Ted's older brother, who is much bigger than Ted. Phone Bone is warned to get out of the valley before the snow hits, and then he meets the rat creatures again. Now, there was something that I noticed rereading this, which I never noticed my first read through, but something I picked up on the second one, which is that the rat creatures seem to switch personalities. So there's they're both stupid, and they're both kind of comic relief to a certain extent. But there's one rat creature who's a little bit more comic than the other one. He's the one who's very sensitive about comments about being called fat, and he's the one who keeps talking about how he likes quiche. And when we first see him in this issue here, it's the brown one who likes quiche. Put him in a light, fluffy quiche. And the purple one who is upset about quiche. Quiche, what kind of food is that for monsters? It's also the brown one here who is sensitive about being called fat. But then, the next time we see them, it's the purple one who likes quiche. And not the brown one. So they seem to have switched personalities in between the two issues. Now, I've been reading repeatedly to my kids Bone and More Tall Tales, in which
Daddy, did you buy what he said, baby bird?
Oh, yeah, guys, I'm going to borrow the library book for just a little bit, and then I'll give it back to you. My kids are very attached to this book from the library, but I've tried to negotiate with them to have it on loan for 30 minutes while I do this video. Anyways, in the course of reading Bone More Tall Tales, which feature these two rat creatures prominently, in that one, the purple one is always the one who is asking for quiche and who is being the more silly of the two, and it's the brown one who's the more serious of the rat creatures. But in this one, they change back personality back and forth a few times, I think. A few panels later, when we get the big attack from the rat creatures, assuming that these are the same rat creatures. Here it's the purple one who is standing up to the dragon until he realizes all his friends have deserted him. Again, that's assuming these are the same two. This is during a time when all the rat creatures are attacking. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyways, the rat creatures, and then Phone Bone is warned to get out of the valley before it snows. But then the snow comes all in one big whump, and he's stuck here. And then we get into issue number 2, where there's a little bit of a time jump. We see that Boneville has been in the valley all winter and has made friends with the various forest animals, including Ms. Possum and her 3 young possum friends. I should jump back and explain something, or maybe reiterate a point I made in a previous video I did when I reviewed Bone, the Complete Epic all in one volume, is that the inspirations for Bone is partly the Carl Barks Donald Duck stories and partly the Walt Kelly Pogo stories. That's something that the author Jeff Smith has said explicitly. And so we see here with these possums, Pogo revolves around Pogo the Possum, of course, which was a comic strip that was featured in the newspapers for many years. So here we've got that connection. There's a bunch of possums that Boneville is responsible for playing with and who figure prominently in these early issues. They get out and are captured by the rat creatures, and then the dragon shows up again. Now, no one else believes the dragon is real, which Boneville finds exasperating, because this is a valley which is full of strange creatures. So he doesn't understand why no one will believe the dragon is real when they believe in everything else. But then Boneville meets Thorn, and he had been told to look out for Thorn earlier by Ted, who's the bug. Ted the bug said Thorn knows everything. But he sees Thorn at a hot spring. He's been told to go to this hot spring to clean up because his face is all smoky from the dragon. And then in what is maybe a questionable series of panels for something that's aimed at children, we see Thorn beginning to undress. And obviously it's got a comic payoff in the fact that Boneville's head immediately catches on fire. But still, I don't know. When I was using these comics in Vietnam, and I used them with my Vietnamese students around age 10 to 12, I was using these to teach them English. And I would put these comic Yep, guys, we don't need to touch the lights on Daddy's desk.
Daddy, you already promised that you let me finish that library book.
Yeah, I'm going to give it back in just a little bit, okay? When I was... Perhaps right now, dear viewer, you are thinking I'm very cruel for keeping this comic away from my children, but they've had it all day, and I've tried to negotiate with them that I was just going to borrow it from them for 20 or 30 minutes. Turn the light back on, please. No. Turn the light on. Okay. Well, why don't you guys go find Mommy, okay? All right. Anyways, when I was presenting the same story to my Vietnamese students, I would just cut these panels right out. Cut from just this one to this one. And you didn't lose any story at all. According to Wikipedia, I believe Disney Adventure also edited these panels out. I mean, granted, it's not explicit, but still. It's a kid's comic. You don't need it. Boneville immediately falls in love with Thorn, which is a little bit strange because they're not even the same species, but it's cartoon logic, so you let it go. And then Boneville's 2 cousins are still out there. He's been separated from them for a while now. So in issue number 3, we find out that Boneville is still out there. Actually, it just gets teased briefly before we go back to Boneville and Thorn. Thorn doesn't believe in the dragon. And the dragon is just hiding around. And Boneville can see him, but Thorn can't. Boneville comes around and being... Boneville is... how would we describe this? He's one of the good guys, but he's one of the grumpy and unscrupulous good guys. What would a good comparison to Phony Bone be like? I feel like there are other characters like him. Kind of like Uncle Scrooge, in the sense that Uncle Scrooge is obsessed with money, and so is Phony Bone. But Phony Bone also has a grumpy and abrasive side. He yells at everyone who tries to help him. Yells at the dragon. You can see the dragon is getting angry here. It's just about to blast him. Then Ted the Bug comes over to help Phony Bone. And he starts yelling at Ted the Bug, and then he gets introduced to Grandma Ben and yells at Grandma Ben. So he's that kind of character. So Grandma Ben comes back and meets Thorn, and then Phony Bone is here. And there's a lot of panels where Phony Bone and Phone Bone are arguing. Goes on for quite a few panels. Again, when I was using this as a teaching aid in Vietnam, using it to teach English to my students, I would have these up on the PowerPoint and I would read aloud for them. And found myself using my yelling voice quite a bit. I mean, I wouldn't really yell in the classroom. It would be kind of... kind of more of an angry, arguing voice as you're going through these panels. It could be quite exhausting on the vocal cords. And, here we go. More arguing. And a little bit exhausting for the story as well, to have so many panels of these characters constantly arguing. Granted, I think it works better when you're reading it to yourself. The problem is I was reading it out loud to the students. Another thing with Phone Bone and Thorn here, where they're taking a bath together. Now we don't actually see we don't actually see Thorn disrobe, but we see evidence of it. And then the punchline here is Phone Bone ate the bar of soap while he was bathing with Thorn naked. Again, when I was using this in the classrooms in Vietnam, I just stopped here at this panel, and I didn't include these panels on the PowerPoint. And again, you miss the punchline about Phone Bone eating the soap. But that's it. You don't lose any other plot points or any other story, so you could cut out these panels quite easily. And I think, again, Disney Adventure apparently did the same thing when they were reprinting these. And then, for whatever this is worth, that's the last time. It's the previous one and this one, and that's the last Thorn is getting naked innuendo. So this is something that... I guess got dropped early in the Bone comics, and it never comes up again throughout the rest of the run. So, you know, you don't have to worry about any of that again if you're worried about this with children. That's the last one. The baby possums again giving directions to Phony Bone. We find out that. The rat creatures are being controlled by King Duck. King Duck is being controlled by the Hooded One. And they're looking to find a creature with a star on its chest, which is Phony Bone. Phony Bone is the one with the star on his chest. Now, why are they looking for Phony Bone with the star on his chest? That's a mystery which is set up very early here and not paid off until much, much later in the series. So that's one of the hooks that keeps you reading. I forget exactly where it gets paid off, but I think it's well into the series that we find the answer to that mystery. Possibly book 7 or around there. Anyways, the rat creatures are attacking. And there's a series here where they fight off the rat creatures and a lot of slapstick. And again, when I use this in my class with the younger kids, 10, 11, and 12-year-old kids, these panels were always a big hit. They laughed at all these parts. As intercut with Phony Bone going to the bar, and then all of a sudden finding out that Smiley is the bartender. So Smiley plies Phony Bone with beer, which Phony Bone says he's going to pay for, only to find out that the people in this town have no idea what money is. They don't use money here, cuz they've never even seen it before. Come again? They trade goods and services. It's a barter system. Chuckles wants real eggs. Now, this is funny and this works because we see here Phony Bone, who's convinced that he has money to pay for all the beers he drinks, all of a sudden finds out he does not have money to pay for the beers he drinks. And as a result, he ends up in the same condition as his cousin, where he has to work off his bar tab, serving drinks and washing dishes. And this condition will set in motion a lot of the future plots, which are going to play out for the next few issues, where they're kind of stuck here in this bar being servants to Lucius, the big burly bartender. So it's good here for this joke, and it's good here for the plots that it's going to set off. It's one of those things that if you examine it too hard, I don't think it really makes sense. I don't think that this kind of level of civilization, which is portrayed in this story as happening in this valley, would make sense just in a barter economy. I mean, what? Everyone who's coming into this bar is bringing in eggs to pay for their beers. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Where they keep the eggs in their pockets? And then what's the bartender going to do when he collects all these eggs? I mean, how is he going to eat them all before they go bad? And yeah, I meone, who's he going to trade them to? And it makes less and less sense the more the story goes along, because Phone Bone and Smiley Bone are fixing a plot to fix the races, fix the betting on the races. And the betting on the races is all in goods and services. The locals don't use money, they trade goods and services. So they have a betting pen in which they just collect all the goods that the locals are putting up for the bet. And actually, that's not even in these issues. That's coming up in the next issues. But I don't think it strictly makes sense, but you give it space because it's a cartoon, and you give these things certain space. Anyways, jumping back here, the dragon once again shows up to chase off the rat creatures, and then we find out that Grandma Ben has some sort of history with the dragon, and they are not on good terms. Hello, dragon. Hello, Rose. It's been a while. Yep. Well, looks like everything's under control. I guess I'll be going. Yep. Yeah, and the history they have with each other is going to be alluded to more as these issues go on, but this is all we get for now. Oh, yeah. One thing I noticed sitting down and just reading through these issues, this book here, the first 6 issues, is actually how quickly all these plot points get set up. Because when I had used these in my classes in Vietnam, we had only done a few panels at a time in each class period. And I had kind of gotten the impression that the story gets set up more slowly than it actually does. But sitting down and reading through these, all these plot points get set up very quickly. Now, at the end of this issue, the main conflict still hasn't kicked up, but we've got all the pieces in play. The hooded one here comes over to Phony Bone, but then goes away, and it's not clear if it's real or just an illusion here. The rat creatures are attacking. They end up coming out. And then all 3 cousins are reunited at last, with Phonebone being happy to see his cousin and yet strangling him, and a mysterious hooded one watching the reunion from the bushes. And that is the end of the first 6 issues here, which make up part 1 of the Bone series.
Daddy, how many times are you going to use this one?
Yeah, almost done.
How many minutes?
Let's say 3 more minutes.
3 more minutes.
So this is the first 6 issues of the Bone series, which form kind of a little miniature story arc. Although, again, these were first released just as individual issues of the comic. And then they were just later collected into these books. And I think the system was 6 issues per book. But they do also work out to little miniature story arcs. The end of the story arc here, everyone is in the Barrel Haven town, and they're all the Bone cousins are reunited, along with Rose and Grandma Ben and Lucius, and they're all there for the Great Cow Race, which is the plot of the next 6 issues, which is collected in Volume 2, which I'm going to try to request that one from the library next and review it next. And maybe I'll just keep that one a secret from my kids until I'm done reviewing it. And then I'll let them read it after I'm done reading it. But yeah, I mean, this series is, I mean, as an adult, I enjoy it. I think adults enjoy this as well, but it's super popular with kids. When I use this with my 10-year-olds, students in Vietnam, they loved it. My 6-year-old daughter loves it. So it's, and I mean, you can see just these bright colors. Although, again, it was originally in black and white, but these very classic cartoon, I mean, Disney-esque type animation pictures here, which is very visually appealing for kids, and some interesting plot threads being woven in. So that is the review of Bone Volume 1, Out from Boneville.